Well, good morning to all our fans, our adoring fans. And before I forget it, even before I go to Pat McGart now, that shows how important this is. There's a little slot below the screen. Look down at it and it says subscribe. Hit that little button. Subscribe, subscribe, subscribe. You will then know for sure that when Pat and I put our heads together to make an argument, no, that Pat and I put our heads together, our wisdom will not be wasted in the air. And if you want to there's another little button that says like, you can click that. I was up for a button saying love, but Pat thought that'd be a bit erotic. Pat, how are you this morning?
It's a nice morning here. Hey, you said erotic. I remember what do you call it? The wee girl who was watching her sister. She says she was swinging erotically. What she meant was erratically.
I have to say, I haven't watched anybody. Well, I suppose I have. My kids on swings now, but we used to have swings in the old days, big swing, really high,
Yeah,
and I could
yeah.
see room for erotic as well as erratic, especially when the girls were swinging. Okay, let's get down to business, Pat, and explain things to the nation. Simon Harris is, as everybody knows, a Taoiseach, and Micheál Martin is the Minister for Foreign Affairs, which incidentally means he's the Minister for the North, but that's another story. Are they singing off the same, what will we call it, grocery list?
No, they definitely are not, Jude.
What's the
Uh,
difference?
Harris, there was an article in the Irish Times. I can't remember who it was by. Jared Howland, who was a former PR guy and whatever the Labour Party, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
He basically said Fianna Fáil has a problem, and the problem is Fine Gael. And Jude, there was no doubt about it. Leo Varadkar said he had taken the Fine Gael party as far as go, and that he was actually becoming a bit of an electoral liability, which was true. For some reason, I don't know what
I
exactly,
was
because he used to be
surprised
very.
by that, Pat. Were you
So was
surprised
I
by that?
actually. I was actually, because I couldn't see it. But anyway, he seems to be right, because since Simon Harris has taken over, now Harris apparently is a very nice guy. He's full of energy. Apparently, he's up early and stays late. He has totally re-energized the Fine Gael party. And by the way, Jude, there's a lovely line in Howland's piece that Fine Gael used to be the party of the well-off, telling the less well-off what was good for them, and that was
Mm-hmm.
totally true. Fine Gael were the West Brits, as I remember them. They were the doctors and the lawyers and the whatever else, and the accountants and the well-off, the well-heeled. Fine Gael was the GA playing, common man. Fianna Fáil was actually the Irish Labour Party by a different name. But anyway, that's all by the way. Anyway, since Harris has come along, Fine Gaels are way up. I think it's 25, 26% in the polls. Micheál Martin seems stale, middle aged, even towards old age at this stage, whereas Harris is young and vibrant, and that is reflecting in the polls. And of course, Jude, my final point is they're saying Harris has not definitively ruled out an election this year. He says we will keep our mandate and go with the full term, but he hasn't said they won't. He hasn't confirmed that. Micheál Martin is stating all the time that they're going to run until next year. I think it's March. But anyway, bottom line is, Jude, if anybody believes that there won't be an election this year, they should go out and sort of look out if there's a blue moon. That budget was a giveaway budget aimed at an election.
Of course it was. Of course it was. But what people, I mean, surely people would still remember it, even if it was a spring election. Or are you saying that the eaten bread will soon be forgotten and they won't, respond appropriately if the election takes place in the spring rather than November?
No, remember Harold McMillan's famous one, events, dear boy, events. Right
Yeah.
now, Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil, well, particularly Fine Gael, obviously, are riding high in the polls. Fine
Hmm.
Gael, particularly, so Fine Gael are want to go. See, by next March, Jude, who knows what will have happened?
Yeah.
If the children's hospital is now running up towards 2.6 billion. BAM are saying that they don't know when it's going to be finished. They've submitted a bill for 25 million for some sort of grid system for air conditioning or something. It was finally done for 200,000. So it looks like somebody's been running rings around the government and So there's all sorts of things that if the opposition got their teeth into them and saying they're wasters, they're spending our money like it's like a
Mm.
drunk and a off license and all that sort of stuff. You can politics. What does they say? A week is a long time in politics.
Yeah, I think that's well, for a start, I don't know about you, but I find Simon Harris hard to respond to. I just he grates on me a little bit, and the notion that he is a fresh face and full of energy and so on, compared to Leo Varadkar, I don't buy that. I certainly he's busier. He rushes around, and he bustles when he could walk. So it seems that the electorate generally are taking that as a sign that he's a fresh wind blowing, and that it'll take Fine Gael to the heights. It does appear to be that, but isn't that the case with football managers too? A team gets a new football manager and it does really well for a while, and then the gloss goes off it, and it
Yeah,
sinks back to its usual torpor. Might the
yeah,
same thing happen with Fine Gael and our friend Harris? That they're
yeah.
excited now, that excitement communicates itself to the electorate, but that could be a passing phase, really.
I'm sure look at the guy at Spurs, and you could Angelo Postacoglu. He
Yeah.
started off brilliantly, and now every time they get a two goal lead, they lose 3-2. So okay, there's that narrative, but no, uh, I agree with you, Jude. Nothing's written in stone in politics. This
Mm.
along comes Harris, and like Jude Harris, his mother, sorry, he doesn't fit the normal Fine Gael mold.
Yes,
His
yes, I
father's a
noticed it.
taxi his father's a taxi driver. His mother is a what do you call it? I think a school assistant,
Special needs woman.
a teaching assistant of some kind. I know he went to university, but he didn't finish his degree. He got a job one summer working for some minister, one of the female ministers. I can't remember her name now.
Mm-hmm.
Was it Gemma Hussey or someone? Doesn't matter. Anyway, and he never went back to college,
Mm.
so he doesn't fit the normal mold. But Jude,
Mm.
he's everywhere. He's like a jack in the box. He's apparently he has a bundle of energy. Jude, after says, and you're 100% right. There's something about him that comes across that he lacks gravitas. But
Yeah.
the other side of the story, see when you read what he says, it comes across very well.
It comes across what?
He comes across very well when you read what he says,
Oh, you
as
read what
opposed
he
to what
says.
he
Well,
says.
yes.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah,
no, Pat,
yeah,
I would agree
yeah,
with you and not agree with you at the same time. Like the latest time that he has spoken publicly has been on his visit to the US, and
yeah,
he was with Biden, and he says he left Biden in no doubt that the Israel was doing appalling things, and they
yeah,
couldn't have to stop, so on. But he didn't
yeah.
say at any point, I said to Joe Biden, will you stop sending weapons to Israel? Now, if he didn't say that, it seems to me that's soft peddling. I guess a lot of people won't see that or accept that, but I definitely feel that's the breakoff point. Do you say to Joe Biden, stop sending weaponry? And that will bring about the ceasefire and the end of violence, rather than this thing of saying, oh, they're doing terrible things, and not even mention the fact that Joe Biden is the accessory to the fact, or to the
Right.
death.
Dude, there's to answer a different. I'm certain he didn't say that. And the other thing is, Ireland is scared shitless of annoying the Americans. And here's the other thing. I am pretty certain that if it was the first year of Joe Biden's presidency, not the last year, and there wasn't a presidential election cycle coming, he would have told Netanyahu to bugger off. Apparently, he's referred to Netanyahu in private conversation, quote unquote, what's the language here, as a fucking liar.
Yes,
That's
yes,
Joe
I saw
Biden.
that.
Yeah, 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 right. So, and Barack Obama, I read his autobiography. He detested Netanyahu, but you can imagine in the electoral cycle, if Joe Biden turned around and said, "We are not sending any more weapons or armaments to Israel," you can imagine how that would play. And what Jewish lobby dominates politics in America, and you can imagine that our ally has been allowed to be overrun by Muslim extremists as we sit back and watch and all this sort of stuff. So anyway, bottom line of it all, Jude, is I think at this stage the American presidential election is of less importance, or of more importance than the lives of Gazans right now
That's
and the
right.
Americans.
That's exactly it, Pat. You've got it in one. That's the fact of the matter. Joe Biden, it's really strange because looking at Joe Biden, and when he came to Ireland, he was such a nice guy and, a sense of humor, and say the odd outrageous thing like, we don't deal with the British, we're Irish and so on. But then suddenly you realize this man is accessory to the fact of
Yeah,
the deaths of so many people. It's
yeah,
so maybe that's what goes with power. If you're going to be the most
yeah.
powerful man in the world, you must be prepared to convince people, among other things, that you would have necessarily pressed the nuclear button.
Mm.
God Almighty.
There was a great friend of mine sent it to me. There was a great sort of wee nugget from a press conference
Yeah.
where an American reporter said to your man Kirby, who's a former, I think, admiral or something. He's the press man now for Joe Biden. And he said to your man, look, you're just doing bullshit up here. He says, you're condemning Syria, you're condemning Russia, you're condemning just about the Houthis, you're condemning Hezbollah, you're condemning Hamas. But he says, it's the same old bullshit. He says, Israel is doing far worse and you're doing nothing about it. Now,
Yeah.
Jude, it was an amazing thing for an American reporter to say to the spokesman. So I wonder, is American opinion starting to change? By the way, the name of the guy, the reporter, just I think I'll throw that in here, was Liam Cosgrove. Did you ever think of that, an Irish name? But anyway,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
want,
Yeah.
and Jude, the Americans have expended so much diplomatic, remember the walkout at the UN? The
Mm.
International Criminal Court has had a go at them. What is it? What's the other court had to go at International Court for Justice? And Jude, what is it? There's 124 countries
Yes.
and the UN, are the International Court for Justice. Like you sort of go, the Israelis right now are losing friends, and the only people seem to be keeping them going is the Americans. And the Americans must have expended a lot of capital, diplomatic capital, on the Israelis that they won't get back.
No, that's for sure. And I tell you, Israel has spent, Israel was, we all had a moral obligation in a sense to Israel because of the way the Jews suffered during the Second World War. But I
Yeah,
actually think they've used up that emotional capital. And,
absolutely.
most people now, you say Israel, and they really clench their teeth at the very thought. Uh,
Mm.
Justine McCarthy has an article in today's Irish Times, Pat. I think you maybe saw it, where she said, the heading is, "Why hasn't The Hague issued a warrant for Netanyahu's arrest?" And
Yeah.
we talked about it before. What is the point in saying somebody's engaged in war crimes if you don't follow through? That's like a policeman saying, Johnny Jones down the road, he broke into an off license and made off with a whole lot of bottles of vodka. That's a crime, and then he leaves it at
Uh,
that. He doesn't go
yeah.
chasing after him.
Yeah, Jude, it's 5 months ago since the International Criminal Court said that they were considering issuing
Yeah,
arrest warrants for Netanyahu and a couple of Hamas. By the way, I think a couple of Hamas guys are dead now.
yeah, yeah.
Uh, and so on. And since then, there's been at least 13, 14, 15,000 Palestinians killed and probably 20,000 seriously wounded. The
Well,
Israelis have gone into Lebanon. They have
mm,
killed 2,000 in Lebanon this week, or this last 2 weeks. They have killed God knows how many in the West Bank. They have opened a war on two or three fronts, and they're seriously considering attacking Iran. So, Jude, like, who's stop? Like, who's the chains, the pullback on Israel? They just seem to be allowed to do whatever they want with American backing.
yeah, well, you said, and it's true that another 10,000 people have been killed since that resolution at the International Court of Criminal Justice, or whatever it's called. 10,000 people killed, 18,000 injured. That's true. But the point is that in a way is beside the point. He had already done, when the court spoke first, he already had done sufficient killing for him to be declared a war criminal or guilty of war crimes. Why the hell
There
they
was
couldn't
well over 25,000 people dead in Gaza at that stage.
what? Why is it? I mean, has it? I gathered from the article that maybe he hadn't ventured into any country that would be part of that International Court of Justice, and therefore they could arrest him. That he's avoided those countries. Of course, he hasn't gone really very anywhere except New York and the United Nations and Israel. Is that the reason you think he hasn't been arrested?
Yeah.
That he hasn't been?
The Brits, remember they arrested General Pinochet because
Yeah,
under the international, he arrived
they were in
and
his
so he was
holidays.
arrested.
Yeah, yeah.
Some law officer, I don't think Thatcher was very pleased about it, but some law officers had under whatever they was. But anyway, dude, let's go back to Simon Harris for a wee bit. He said when he was talking to Joe Biden, he said it was an egregious breach of international law,
Mm.
and he says he says he made it very clear to Joe Biden what was going on, and he says I thought he actually made a good point. He says Israel will be judged on what it does, not what it says. Dude, this week I was listening to the news yesterday on RTE, and Israel deliberately targeted UNIFIL posts. They attacked a bunker where I don't think Irish troops were there, but they injured a couple of the guys on a lookout post. They deliberately targeted UN cameras that monitor what's going on in the area, and so on. And Jude, the French foreign defense minister has said what happened was outrageous. The Italian defense minister says he's looking for some sort of explanation. Simon Harris says, what was it? It was an egregious breach of international law. But Jude, to get back to your point, it's going to do anything about any of that.
Yeah, if they simply engage in name calling, I mean, sticks and stones may break my bones. The Justin McCarthy makes the point that it's not. I mean, the same thing could well apply to Biden, a
Yeah,
war criminal, because he was an accessory to the slaughter. He was the guy who
yeah,
provided the weaponry. And if you or I brought some guy out to a bank and says, here's a gun, go in there and rob that bank, or even you just give
mm,
him the gun and said nothing, you'd be an accessory to what was done, and you would be a criminal. So
yeah.
why does it not? Is it a case of Joe Biden's too big, we dare not? And is it a
That's
case that
exactly what it is.
Netanyahu's too
Yeah.
sensitive, we dare not?
Yeah. What Jude, UNIFIL said that the Israelis deliberately targeted some of their bases. Now, there's 15 nations involved in peacekeeping. I think you get the impression the Israelis don't give one shit about, they're going to do the arrogance and they sort of, whatever you like to call it, they're just going to do whatever suits them. So they've attacked, right, left, and center. See when, getting back to what you said, see when this is all over, there's going to be some kind of reckoning. Now, I don't know what's, but I'll tell you this much, and I've said this before, and it's my firm belief. See this thing about the UN and world order and international law, forget
Uh,
about it.
yeah. It's funny, just at the point when that guy Fukuyama, I think his name was, wrote that book about the end of history, saying, we now
Yeah.
had arrived at a state where the Soviet Union had dissolved and sort of globalization, worldwide democracy and capitalism. And then the next thing, the whole thing fell apart. There was nothing but,
Mm.
there is nothing but wars breaking out everywhere. So I think history's got a way to go before we can
Remember,
say
let's get this clear.
that's it.
Even during the Second World War, the Germans and so on, they respected the Red Cross.
Mm,
The journalists were by and large left alone. There were certain, what would you say, we'll not call it chivalry, but rules. There's really, they have attacked 40 ambulances so far in Lebanon. They've killed about 2,000 people. They've killed well over 250 UN personnel. They have
mm,
killed 172 journalists in
mm,
Gaza. And no, the thing about it as well, they banned Al Jazeera. They closed it down in Israel. They have refused to allow the BBC, NBC, CNN,
mm.
Australian Broadcasting Company, anyway, no independent journalists are allowed into Gaza, and so on. And yet they're sitting back, and the hypocrisy of the West, and sort of saying, "Oh, they're simply defending us." Dude, when you've killed nearly 45,000 people in Gaza, under what definition of the word defending does that come under?
Yeah. Well, I suppose, to be fair to the Israelis, and I find it difficult to be so, if you're at war, you will do anything you can get away with.
Yeah.
And I think they know that they can invade Gaza. They know they can invade Lebanon. They know they can do just about anything they want. They can kill children, mothers, anyone. They can attack even UN forces if they get in the way. And they can say, well, we told them to move and they wouldn't move. So that was their own, they asked for it. If you're at war and you can get away with anything, then why not do it? I think most of us,
Yeah.
if we were at war, would do the same thing. I mean, God forbid it, we would, but that's what war is about. You find ways of
But
hitting the
let's
enemy,
let's
killing
put it in
members of the enemy, and hoping that the consequences won't be too bad.
yeah, right. And between 1st of January 2023 and the 6th of October, take the 7th out of it, I think the Israelis had killed up to nearly 250 Palestinians. And the 15 years before that, they'd killed more than 6,000 Palestinians. They have what they call administrative detention, where it's like internment. They don't even need a charge. They scooped up all sorts. I think there was about 9, 10,000 Palestinians. Some of them held for years without it. They have an apartheid state. They've built walls and so on. The Gazans, they have had the lowest income in the world. Almost, they had I think 80% unemployment in Gaza. The Israelis curtailed entry, exit, air, land, sea. Now, would somebody tell me how anybody in the West could say that is a fair system and that the Israelis are defending themselves?
But the trouble is, Pat, I think people know that. I think they know it. I think it sort of dismays me is in the world, among those who really detest what's happening in Gaza and in Lebanon and the West Bank, there are an awful lot of bright, smart, super smart people. I would say good people as well. Are those super smart, good people not capable of getting organized in such a way that they can pass resolutions that will really undermine what Israel is doing? I mean, there must be Americans, there must be English people, there must be Europeans who find this as appalling as any normal people, any normal person would.
I have a suggestion for you. I read yesterday that 200 various unions in Spain are coming together to demand that the Spanish government bring someone to Europe to disassociate Europe from supporting Israel. I think the Irish Congress of Trade Unions, as a matter of urgency, should say we will all cooperation with Europe in regard to Israel stops now, and we want Ireland to disassociate itself formally, and even things like diplomatic. Bugger out permanently the ambassador. Things like that, real things that show Israel that it's no longer what they're doing is
Yes.
way, way beyond what's acceptable.
So do people, I mean, if you know that and I know that, why aren't smart people or people who are organized in trade unions, why aren't they doing it?
That's the point. The Spanish have started. I think it's a precedent that should be followed by others.
Yeah, well, let's hope they will. I'm getting weary talking about this thing because I see when it appears on TV now, I turn over. When they start
I'm the
reporting
same.
about Gaza, I turn over. I
can't
can't
take it. Yeah.
I just can't take
Yeah.
it anymore. Okay,
Yeah.
it's sort of like the way they were told that the Brits used to react when Northern Ireland came on the screen during the Troubles.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah.
let's talk a wee bit about pouches, Pat.
Yeah.
I never heard of this thing called a phone pouch. Did you ever hear of a phone pouch before recent days?
No.
Well, the Irish government's happily spending, in fact, I mean, even have spent 20 million euro on them. And the idea is,
No, it's 9 million on them.
oh, nine,
9
is it?
million.
Oh, well, then
Uh,
that's really peanuts. Anyway,
uh,
it's an effort
they
to.
cost 20 euros each, and
Oh,
they're
that's it.
Norma
Yes,
Foley,
20
the
euros
Minister for
each and 9 million.
Education.
Yeah, yeah.
Aye.
You think it's a good idea, Pat, to lock them away during the day and not have the kids distracted?
I
I know
think it's
I've
a good
talked about this
idea.
before, but
No, my eldest son is a school teacher. He's a vice principal of a school, and I was chatting to him the other day, and he says, "Dad, that's a waste." And his opinion, and maybe I shouldn't be quoting him, but he reckons it's a waste of time. He says, like, they have a policy in school that the kids do not have access to their phones during class, etc., etc., etc. And apparently, from what I can gather, it works perfectly good. Now, Jude, 9 million. I think 9 million spent on maybe service for autism
Oh,
or for
God.
people who have sort of maybe other sorts of difficulties, kids who maybe are whatever mental health issues, access to
Yeah,
therapists and stuff like that.
yeah.
Jude, I would much rather see that than 9 million being spent on pouches for schools.
Pouches. It's sort of crazy. I mean, if I was in charge in a school or was responsible for this, it seems to be pretty obvious. You'd assume every kid has got a phone, and you say when you
Yeah,
come in, go up to this room and have your name on it, a tag on your phone, and we'll take it and we'll put them in different sections for the different years,
yeah,
and we'll
yeah,
lock the door at the beginning of the day. At the end of the
yeah,
day, we'll come and we'll unlock the door. We might even finish them 5 minutes early so you can get back to your phone.
yeah,
Why would you need a pouch? It sounds super sort of space agey and with it and so on.
yeah,
God almighty, all you need to do is not allow them, if that's what you want to do, not allow them to have access to the phone. And as you say, there's schools like your son's that are already solving the problem. Of course, for
yeah,
them it's a problem, and they've come up with their own solutions. And a lot of people, as you have just said, believe that the government should be using the money in other ways if they want to help education. But I think
yeah,
it's just part of this, as they call it, virtue signaling,
yeah,
that we see this as a problem. We're on the teacher side. We don't want to see the damage done to young minds. So we'll
yeah,
take the phones and we'll put them all in a special pouch. Incidentally, in an article, one of the articles in the Irish Times today about this, they say that they compare this to smoking. They
yeah. I
say
saw
that
that.
for a long time, people hung back, companies hung back, governments hung back from outlawing, banning smoking in certain places or public places. And to be fair to Micheál Martin, he was the man who did it in Ireland, and not everybody thought he would succeed, but he succeeded in the end. And I mean, he really has transformed the situation when you go into a restaurant or into a bar. You're not breathing
Mm,
lungfuls of other people's smoke. But
mm,
having said all that, and pointed out that this article shows a comparison between the harm done by smoking, either passive or active smoking, and these phones. And she says, well, everybody agrees that the phones social media is harmful. I don't agree with that. I don't agree
mm,
with that. I have a relative, let's say, who in the early
mm,
days of the internet said, I never bother with it. There's nothing on it but porn. Well,
mm.
he was half right and he was half wrong. Of course, there's
Yeah,
porn, plenty of porn, as much porn as you want and probably more than you want on the internet. But there's
mm,
also a hell of a lot of other things. And the same thing
yeah,
applies to phones. Of course, you could
yeah,
bully. Oh, I'm getting a call.
yeah.
Uh,
I,
okay, so are you going along with this notion that these things are bad, social media, just as tobacco was once bad and we had to learn the hard
uh,
way?
well, yeah, I think it was the University of Chicago. I read it in the Irish Times this morning. Said a survey said children who are less distracted by phones perform better. Well, that's sort of obvious. But the key thing you're saying, the substantive point, does it need 9 million quid in Ireland, a small island, pouches for people when they can put them in their lockers, when the teachers can take them up and put them at the front desk? If the mother or father wants urgently to contact their kids, all if you do is ring the school secretary and say, "Look, can I speak to Johnny?" Jude, it's not a big issue.
Mhm.
Well, it is a big issue if it's a distraction, but there are other ways to deal with phones in schools. I
Ah,
presume there are various protocols and they can deal with them. They don't
yeah.
need the government interfering with 9 million.
Somebody said, was it Ronnie Reagan that said the most frightening words in the world were, I'm from the government and I'm here to help you?
Judd, changing the subject quickly because I don't know how
Yeah,
long we've left.
yeah,
You didn't watch the program on Tuesday night,
I did.
the Brighton bombing, the
I
plot to
did
kill
actually. Oh, well,
Thatcher.
I watched the recording last night.
Yeah.
I'd be very interested in your thinking on it, Pat. And then I'll
Jude,
tell you
I thought
all the things you're wrong
in the
about.
middle of it all, the one thing that's jumped out at me was Thatcher's total hypocrisy. She said, "I condemn the man of violence. I condemn violence and all the rest." And then she turns to the camera and she says, "I have always supported the death penalty. Bring back the death penalty. Bring back hanging." And I said, "A minute, if you're anti-violence, tell me something more violent than state-sponsored uh, ritual killing." Right. The other thing as well, this is a woman, Jude, who, when a ship was sailing away in the Falklands, the Malvinas, the Belgrano, ordered to be struck down. 800 young recruits, Argentinian, went to the bottom of the sea, and she doesn't believe in violence. By the way, the other thing, just throw in this as well, are our friends, Sir Bob Geldof and Bono, who condemned IRA violence right, left, and centre, and were eulogized for it. Even Sir Bob got knighted. Do you hear a word from either of them about what's happening in Israel and Gaza?
Yeah. It's the old story, if you get the microscope or the magnifying glass and look at some particular killing, it really is pretty horrifying. And I find Danny Morrison quite interesting in that, what he said. He said as he got older, he saw how terrible the death of anybody was, including himself, I suppose he's thinking. But that at the time, he was sorry that Thatcher wasn't got. I suspect that's fairly widely held view.
Yeah,
Would you agree? Would most Irish people have
absolutely.
that view or not?
Yeah, you see, Jude, an individual killing's terrible, but see when it's done from an airplane and a bomb strap, it seems sort of impersonal, and that person's not. Jude, see the Israeli guy who drops a bomb on a tent. And I don't know how he goes home to his wife in the evening, but he's a hero. He's not a murderer. Yet an IRA man who goes out and shoots somebody up the street, oh, he's a murderer.
But Pat, you haven't told me what you think about Irish sentiment at the time. Would there have been, because they say that the IRA was delighted. They thought it was a very good strike, but it's just a pity they didn't take out Thatcher.
Good. I would say that a friend of mine one time said, scratch any Irish person and you'll find maybe a wee IRA supporter. I'm not 100% sure that's true, but I'll give you a guarantee. If Thatcher had been taken out at that stage, no tears would have been shed in Ireland. None.
Right. And in fact, I mean, if you want proof of that, when she died, there were people, I mean, it was a sort of disgusting when you think about it, but there was people dancing in the streets, literally, in different parts of England as well as in Ireland.
Judge, there are parts of England where they still sort of spit on Thatcher's name. And sure, Jude, one of the reasons they can't put up a statue to her is they know that she's such a divisive character that paint would be thrown at it. Jude, maybe they'll be able to put up one in 100 years, but that stage, who gives a shit?
But listen, just a last thought, Pat. Did you think it was a well-made program?
Yeah, it was all right. I thought, they could have given different points of view. It was all right. Wait, I presume
No,
you're
I thought it was very well done. And they're using this tactic that the documentaries are taking on a lot. Oh God, we're in the last seconds where the guy settles in the seat and I think he assumes in most cases the cameras aren't running, but the cameras are running. And it's a very interesting, informal little insight.
That started at Once Upon a Time in Northern Ireland, that program. So it's a very interesting.
Okay, Pat. Any
All the
fun
best,
for the weekend?
No, by the way, I started reading Lorna Doone. I don't know why I started reading
God,
Lorna
I read
Doone.
that. I was on the course. It wasn't in our class, but I remember boys going around talking about Lorna Doone. Okay, I think that's us, Pat.
On that note,
okay.
Jude.
Okay then.
Bye, Jude.